Playtime's over.
Hello, Cheapar here. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of gameplay with Smackdown versus Raw 2010. This is the WWE game that came out on Nintendo DS, actually the last one. There's a number of iterations of Smackdown versus Raw on the Nintendo DS, but those are more focused on using the actual touchscreen to do moves with the stylus to be able to execute those moves. So it was almost like more of a quick time game than actually being a full-scale wrestling game where you could grapple, move around yourself. With the last iteration of SmackDown vs. Raw 2010 on the Nintendo DS, from what I can tell from the gameplay, this is fully executable in terms of doing the moves, controlling your character in the ring, and from what I also hear, I believe this actually plays like my favorite game, or one of my favorite games of all time, definitely in my top 5, WWF No Mercy for the N64. So apparently the gameplay on this game is similar to that. Now, of course, with these ports, they're heavily watered down from their console bigger brothers, but I'm sure there's still plenty of enjoyment to be had on this version. So without further ado, you can't see me.
Psych. Clearly, I'm not in the wrestling business. But going on to the box itself, purchased this on Mercari for about $18 shipped. And looking at the box, it looks like it is almost new. The box comes complete, no damages, and looking at the cartridge and in the instruction manual, everything looks brand new. So we're going to get this fired up on my Nintendo 3DS, which of course is backwards compatible and can play DS games. So in starting up the game, there's plenty of different match types. Much of this is standard. You can go ahead and jump into your regular exhibition by jumping into the play mode. You've got a story mode, which you are an up-and-comer jobber that goes through kind of the rigmarole of becoming a superstar in the WWE. There's the creator wrestler, there is the multi-card play, and there is the view your collection of cards, and of course recording your wins and losses. Now the whole point of these cards, as you'll see shortly, is to give you advantage in the match itself. Now, in terms of the exhibition, you've got one-on-one, last man standing, ladder match, steel cage, tables, TLC, Extreme Rules, ambulance, and backstage, which I still have to unlock. I'm going to go into tables. Now, the roster itself is pretty standard for 2010. There's not going to be any legends here. It's just going to be the most modern wrestlers as the time. And of course, the wrestlers they have here are looking pretty good for the DS. They're pretty highly detailed for what this system hardware is capable of. So we're going to go ahead and jump into a match and see how it plays with respect to being a No Mercy, at least a spiritual type of successor with respect to play. There are plenty of arenas to choose from, like the Raw, ECW, SmackDown, a couple of pay-per-views, much of which are unlockable. You can choose your difficulty mode right before you start the match for exhibition. You can see the individual models side by side, much like the No Mercy and early SmackDown days. Now, going to the match itself, you can see that there are full entrances, and this is where you can actually choose the 3 cards that you can activate over the course of the match that give you an advantage. These are special abilities, like having extra stamina or kind of like a comeback that you can choose over the course of the match. Now, something to point out with respect to the entrance that is very similar to No Mercy is that there's not full motion video in the entrance. It is just still pictures that are playing as if it's a full motion video, but full entrances and full entrance music nonetheless. There are also ring announcers that announce the wrestlers' names and their hometown. Now, going to the match, this is where it really kicks off in terms of identifying the clear similarities to No Mercy. You have these weak and strong grapples, and unlike what later became with the SmackDown series and the, of course, 2K series, is that when you initiate into that grapple, you get into a locked position, whether a weak grapple or a strong grapple. Now, weak grapples are done through by pressing B, just tapping it, whereas strong grapples are done by holding the B button. And by pressing the different directions and the B button once again, you can go into the actual grapple move that leads into a power move or submission or just a variety of different actions that are particular to that wrestler. So definitely like No Mercy with respect to those weak and strong grapples by either tapping or holding on to the B button to enter into the grapple and then initiate the move by pressing B again. Striking works similarly in terms of using the Y button, just tapping it for a quick strike and then holding it down longer for a heavier strike. So I found that to be really cool and probably the closest equivalent to No Mercy. Now, of course, this is a lot more limited in the types of moves, so you're looking something more akin to the early Akai or Aki games that did the No Mercy, WrestleMania 2000, Revenge, and World Tour games, where there are no running grapples, there are no moves really from the ropes itself. So there's limitations into the amount of movesets that each character has. And that's just a part of the game as being the hardware limitations of having this small cartridge. L is used for guarding, and I've noticed that it seems to do well in terms of doing reversals, even though the manual itself doesn't identify that. R is for standing up the opponent and also for turning the opponent around when you're in a grappled position. Now, again, with the limitations of the cartridge hardware, there's not going to be a full case of you being able to put the opponent onto the table. If you actually prop up the table, and I don't know, I haven't played all the different match types, but if you prop up the table, you're automatically going to do a move that you have no control of. So it kind of starts this cinematic whenever you prop up the table, and then of course you initiate your move to break the table, and that ends the match. Or again, if you're playing a TLC match, anytime you do a move, it's going to initiate that cinematic. When you end the match itself, you're given the opportunity to gain new card types that are those advantages that you play within the match. Not all the match types are so limited. When playing a cage match, for example, the point here is to, of course, make your opponent exhausted and groggy enough and weak enough so that you can start climbing the cage, and that initiates a minigame that you have to press the button at the right time in order to continue into almost a three-phase climb outside of the cage. So that's still uninteractive enough. That's not so limited as you would have with a TLC or a tables match. Still pretty cool and all of it enjoyable. Just keep in mind that because when you're locking into a grapple, you're going to be kind of pausing because they're each kind of locked in. And that's going to slow down the gameplay to make it more simulation type. And I love that. I love that it doesn't just jump into the move. And I do love the amount of match types. Because, again, of the hardware limitations with the system, all these are one-on-one matches. I don't see any Fatal 4-Way. I don't see any Royal Rumble, but there's still plenty of match types to choose from and plenty of card unlockables to give you those bonuses and advantages during the match that are unlockable after each match. So doing exhibition matches does gain you benefits that are going to give you leverage besides just having to unlock stuff in the story mode. So I found that to be really cool. Finishers also work somewhat like No Mercy in terms of if you press the L button in a strong grapple mode after building up your momentum meter, which turns flashing, you can be able to execute a finisher. Moving on to the story mode, of course, you are a jobber and you're working way up in the WWE. You got Triple H as the champion at this point, and much like the actual WWE locker room, it's just not safe for a jobber like me. It's not going to be safe for anybody new to the company that hasn't worked their way up and learned the ropes physically. So in terms of the story mode, I believe this is very similar to how the console versions were, at least the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions, that you had a world map and you would jump between locations, whether it's the gym or the hospital or the locker room, or the kind of the executive backstage rooms, or going into the arena to kind of build up your stamina, to improve your health, to kind of engage in different types of alliances and stories backstage. And all that flows to being almost like a little bit of RPG elements to the game. And it's all really cool. It's all really neat. And again, to have these different options to build your character's repertoire both physically and within storylines, there's enough here to really have a good bite of it in terms of your time on the go with having this mobile version of a WWE game. Again, really cool to be able to have this full-fledged story mode in the DS version. So 3DSs are definitely worth purchasing nowadays. There's a wealth of different software on here, whether you're hacking it or not. These are one of the games that you definitely want to pick up. This one I picked up complete, nearly new for $18 shipped. I don't regret the purchase. It's a lot of fun. Even though it doesn't have the legends that you may be wanting, to be able to have a full-fledged, fully meaty wrestling game for the DS that plays somewhat similarly to No Mercy, I definitely enjoy it to have this almost like spiritual gameplay successor to my favorite games. For those that may know other games that play like No Mercy, outside of a lot of the GameCube games like Day of Reckoning 2, and some of the WrestleMania games, if there's any other games that play like No Mercy, please leave your comments in the comment section and kind of identify what your recommendation is. But I highly recommend this one. This is a lot of fun. Even with the slower gameplay, even with the limitations of the hardware that makes some of the matches somewhat more of a quick time event, definitely still worth a pickup. So with that, guys, please like, comment, and subscribe.
If you smell what I'm cooking.